work, but I just didn't have that much patience. So, so what I end up doing is I run a VM on my Windows box. It's terrible, but if I want to, or just launch to get on a Linux box, run that script. You can specify all the wonderful things like your node type, your number of nodes, your spot instance price if you want to run a spot, and all this stuff. Put it in, and it just magically will, a few minutes later, will launch this cluster up in Amazon, and it's running, and it's with Spark. It's great. So, and the cost is perfect. I mean, I wouldn't say perfect. It's not free, but it's very, very low. I mean, I pretty regularly start up these Spark instances, and I get a bill from Amazon on my personal account. I think, I don't know, $1.73, last month. So it's not breaking the bank. So it's a great way to get low cost. You use spot instances, right? And you can. Has anybody tried Spot with some of these bigger, with more memory, the bigger instances? I'm sure you can, right? There's no reason you couldn't. But so that's a great way. If you want to do proof of concept, I would strongly recommend doing that. You could. That's the easiest way. That's the easiest way.
How many nodes does it start up?
You can specify however many you want. By default, I think it does 2, but you could, I've spun up maybe 20 at one time. It's my credit card, so I don't want. But yeah, I mean, there's as many nodes as you like. So there's a command line parameter. You can.
You paid $1.70 that time?
Yeah, yeah,
With 20 nodes?
yeah. I didn't have it for days and days, right? I mean. Right. Yeah, I part of that was some of my free time as well and all this stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, part of it was I did Spot, right? And I used modest instances and all of that. And yeah, it doesn't cost a lot of money. I mean, if you go like there's the on-demand price, right? That Amazon charges, which I don't know, 50 cents, $1, something like that per node, something like that. But if you quote that price as a Spot instance, the real price you're going to get is whatever. How does it work? How does it figure that out? It's based on how much other people, how much the demand is. So it could be 1/10 of that price. And if you do it late at night or you do it at odd hours, you can get it really cheap. You get it really cheap.
Default is M1 large.
Yeah, by default, M1 large, right. But you can specify whatever Actually, it doesn't work with all instances. There's a handful of instances that I think it supports. So.
There are some drawbacks on that script. I did talk to the Amazon folks. If you want to run in your own VPC, you will not be able to do it.
That I haven't. Have you tried in our VPC? I've tried because.
You cannot. I did. I looked at the script, the Python thing which they wrote.
Yeah.
And there's no parameter which says you can specify your VPC.
Yeah.
So what happens is it will run in the default VPC.
Right. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
cannot do that. You have to hack the script. You can hack it and you can just not do it.
Yeah. Fortunately, it's not that hard to follow. It's not great, but I found not that hard to follow. And you can get in there and modify. Like you have to put in some of your tags and things for your specific. That's a good point, and maybe that's something that really needs to be improved.
And Amazon also is working on it, to run it in EMR so that.
Oh, right, run it EMR.
I think they are working on it.
Yeah, there's one out there. There's one image out there, but it's an old one. It's like a 0.81 or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's correct. They have 0.8 and I think they are working on 1.0.
Yeah, 1.0 and what. I mean, you could create one yourself, but it's kind of a pain. It's a lot of work. So there's some gaps there that it needs to come up to speed, I guess, to the later. And 1.1 is going to come out very soon. Where it's I think there's a release candidate that just came out. Okay. So that's a quick way. If you want to do proof of concept, that's what I would recommend. That's an easy way to do it. All right. And okay. So just to summarize quickly, so is it going to work? Is it going to do everything you want to do? Well, if MapReduce works for you, it's very, very likely the Spark will work faster. It'll at least do what MapReduce does for you. There's a few little edges which, but for the most part, it'll do what you need to do, right? If you have iterative algorithms, that's definitely what you want to do. Yeah.
Would you, oh my God,
Yeah.
would you recommend folks that are running on MapReduce to switch?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I don't see any reason not to, right? I mean, go ahead. Yeah.
So by that, would you say it's totally production ready? There's like a random log where somebody
You know, let me answer it this way. I don't believe MapReduce is production ready. I'm totally serious because I deal with that and see, Terry sits across from me and he hears me complain. I'm complaining all the time because it's just not. What is the current version of Hive? Can somebody tell me what the current version of Hive is? 0.13. So when is 1.0 coming out? Right? So it's that, and it's so you.
Could you elaborate, like what kind of problems? Is it just crash or?
No, it's not. It's documentation is a problem. Different versions work differently. I give it perfectly, like distributed cache. I'm always running problems with that. I do it a certain way. Well, the API is deprecated. Okay, do it the recommended way. Well, it turns out it doesn't return what it's supposed to. It returns something totally wrong. And I call my buddy, actually called Terry, I called Samir, I said, hey, what's the story? And he says, hey, look, it works on my machine. It works on my cluster. Oh, great, I'll just run on your cluster then. Then we dig through it and it says, oh, yeah. It turns out I'm running CDH 4.5 with this particular patch. Maybe you should run that. Well, maybe I shouldn't, right? Maybe because I'm running on EMR version blah, 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 and it has this version. It's just not as well managed, I think. And again, I'm not faulting the MapReduce guys, the Hadoop guys, whatever. It's just really not as the quality. Open source, you get what you pay for, right? You didn't pay anything. Well, so I think in that way, Spark's a lot better. Because you know why? I have confidence in Spark because I can go into the source code and figure out what's wrong. I don't know where to start with MapReduce. I tell you, I've looked at it and I'm like, you know what I compare it to? Remember that old Star Trek episode where there was, what did they call it, the governor? It was like this alien that was in this box, right? And apparently you had to wear these special goggles, right? Whenever you spoke to the alien, right? Because if you didn't wear those special goggles and you open this box, you'd go mad. That's pretty much what it is. It's like you take off those goggles and you look in the source code, you go mad, right?
Like if you had it running in development for a week or something and nothing happened, you put it into production, would it stay running for like 6 months, depending, you don't know what data loads you might have or data, unknown data, or is it?
I've seen no reason why it wouldn't. Right? Because fundamentally, it's not that complicated. That's the whole point of it. It's not that complicated, right? Yeah, there are problems and people run into, there are bugs everywhere. There are issues, there are whatever and all that. And, and people also, you want to be careful and not assume, it's going to solve all your problems, it's going to be perfect, and it's going to work perfectly in every time. It's not. It's open source. There's going to be bugs. So you have to keep it in perspective. And I'm not one of these guys that gets a car and just runs it as fast as it'll go the first day I get it. I try to be a little bit cautious about it and say, well, I know these functions, I've used them, I've tested them, I have confidence in them, right? And I know how they work, and in worst case, if I look at the code, I know what it's doing, right? You can run with a small data set and you iterate over a million times, it's pretty stable. Only thing with a large data set, you just have more nodes. You just have more partitions. So I sort of look at it, I sort of have confidence in thinking it's like, well, if the underpinnings are stable, there's no reason that it can't scale, right? There's very little in there that precludes it from scaling. That's the real key to it, right? As long as it can scale to 2 nodes or 3 nodes successfully, why couldn't it scale to 100 or 1,000, right? That's really what it comes down to.
Quick question, can you just briefly talk about the front modules, graphics and mlib? Because
Yeah.
I tried to look at that mlib.
Yeah.
And I did not find the real use case for that mlib there.
Oh, well, you got to be into machine learning to really, to get into that. I mean, I've done a little bit of mlib. I haven't done any Spark, the GraphX at all. I haven't looked at it much but the mlib, I did some of the clustering and it works. It's pretty straightforward. So I guess your question is, what do you do with it? Or
Where do what is this for?
machine learning. So what is machine learning? Classification, clustering, linear regression. There is a whole number of well-known algorithms and new ones that are developed for certain kind of machine learning applications, and that's a bigger subject. What I would say I'd recommend is learn more about machine learning. Right, just learn the ideas of what the problems they're trying to solve, and then you'll see they're implemented in Spark. And now that it's still somewhat not very mature, and for a particular reason, one of the most common things that comes on the list, and somebody says, I've got this wonderful machine learning algorithm I'd like to port to Spark, and I'd like to put it on there and whatever. And there's always somebody saying, well, hold on, we're trying to get the fundamentals worked out, so it's a little bit. So it's not as far along as people would like, but there's a lot of people that want to add a lot more to it and add many more algorithms to it. Oh, time?
No, I have two questions.
Yeah.
First, do you know anybody who's using Spark for gene sequencing and alignment use cases?
I do
In place of like
not.
Crossbow and other MapReduce oriented?
No, I don't. Is anybody here doing that? Okay, there's a couple of people, right? Yeah, so there's.
Yeah, give the microphone if somebody could, kind of describe what they're doing. My second question is it true that helicopter pilots are less stable than fixed wing pilots?
No, it's totally false. Because you know why? Helicopters are totally, totally unforgiving. I kid you not. At least 3 of the helicopters that I've flown have been destroyed.
When you
By
were in
pilot
them?
error, yeah. Not when I
you-
was in them,
oh,
fortunately
okay.
not. Fortunately
Okay.
not, no.
Excellent, okay, thanks.
Yeah, good question?
Can you share RDD across different nodes? What I mean is, if I created an RDD on one of the node, right? And
Okay.
then I need to use the same RDD from a different node.
Well, you gotta change your mindset. The RDD is not on a particular node. The RDD is
Yeah,
an abstraction that represents all of the data and all of the. Assume it's everywhere.
Yes, but if I created using an app, right, Spark app that I connect to a Spark node, created an RDD, and I have another machine
Oh,
that
okay.
is adding as different servers.
You mean like a different cluster or a different
No,
computer? that's not-
different computer, different client.
Oh, another program.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So 2 different programs, both Spark create RDDs. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Can I share it across? Reuse one of them, because like if I'm running as an API server that talk to a Spark clusters, right? I created RDD from one of the API server, and then another API server need to use the same RDD. Do I need to recreate
You
again?
know, I don't know that you can do that because it's really an object reference that you've got, and I believe it's probably in a different memory space. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Does anybody try that? Yeah. I don't know if there's a trick, but I don't think so. I mean, worst case, you put it HDFS and share it that way. Yeah. 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 Right. So use some other layer to. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it's like HDFS, some kind of sharing mechanism. All right. Comment.
Yeah, can you talk about security in Spark?
To the best of my knowledge, it's pretty much limited to what you've got in HDFS and Hadoop. I don't know of anything right now that's that's specific to Spark security. So it's really underlying. So if you've got Kerberos, obviously it's going to use Kerberos because it's using HDFS and so on. And same thing, you've got